Okay, welcome to Bigger Truth Podcast. And I am Scott McMahon, and I've got Matt Wilk here with me this morning. I apologize profusely for the delay. It is, we had some major technical difficulties, and really, of course, it's my fault. So, but we are here and we're back, and I'm so glad that all of you have joined us, and especially Matt. We're here to talk about the story that I put up, that I posted last night. And it is just another here in Michigan. There have been several, as Matt will attest to and explain, over the last years. There have been several different kind of campaigns to that claim to have the real law, common law, freeman, sovereign man movement kind of things, where they claim to they talk about in the preamble of the Constitution how all power is derived from the people, and in my view, ultimately, this is an anarchistic campaign. Saying, well, we have the power, so we're the boss over government. And they quite literally say we're the boss over government. Now, all power is derived from the people, but the rest of the Constitution lays out and explains exactly how that's to happen, so we're not trampling on each other's rights. So just a quick rundown. I want to share, just as a backstory, if you have not seen this story yet. I posted it last night on my Substack. It's biggertruth.substack.com. And it is, what I showed, it was crazy. I mean, I've been working on this over the last week and a half or so, and there has been collusion between two groups of disruptors from Michigan and from Arizona. And they are working together, and they say that they're working together. Right here is a post yesterday. We the People notices. They have this website, We the People notices, and we'll look at that in a few minutes. And they posted on Twitter, Michigan and Arizona will join to teach the people how to restore our republic by God. And then they tag Brian Frentz, who is, I've been looking at this in multiple states, and in my opinion, Brian Frentz, he stands out in my mind as the most offensive and aggressive and really unkind, like just brutally mean, and pathological liar. Like he really stands out in my view. Liz Harris, she is. She was removed from the state legislature, and for her tactics, really. And then Real Dave cares for you, and this is Dave Jose, who is really the subject for the most part of this report. And then the others, I believe, Snyder here. This is Craig Snyder. The others, I believe, are all in District 1. Craig Snyder is on the executive committee for District 1. So they say assembling for the common good and the multitudes are gathering. So they are really recruiting. And from what I understand, this is a very, very popular idea because our election laws suck. And I think, it's pretty clear that our election laws are designed by Democrats to encourage fraud. At least that's my opinion. So before we get too much further into that story, Matt, I'd like to get a little background from you on how this has happened in the past, and or similarities that you see between this and other similar campaigns in the past.
Well, yeah, sure. So to back it up, as much as people say that the power is derived from the people, so understand that the concept is we take votes on things, and that if a majority of people feel a certain way, then so shall it be done, with the limitations provided in the Constitution. What it does not provide ever is the right for one person to step in and say, I think the law is this, and therefore township official, county clerk, state chair, whatever, you must do what I tell you to do. That is not the case. This recalls back to a time a few years ago where I am a former school board member and been very much involved in school stuff. And a couple of ladies thought that the way to get masks off and schools open was to call their bonds. And all you had to do was give a notice and magically the rules would change. And I called into a radio show and I said, I don't know who these two people are. I've never met them, but there's no such thing. There literally is in Michigan no such thing. And they hemmed and hawed around the fact that schools in Michigan didn't have bonds. And this was all predicated on something that was, they had read somewhere or whatever, it didn't matter, but it wasn't there and it didn't work and it was a complete failure. And what it did, importantly, and Scott, to your point, is what it does is it takes away effort towards the real change. So what these people needed to do was go to their school board and argue and say, hey, we think schools should be open, we think masks should be off, and convince your elected officials to make that decision. There was no way to force them by handing them a piece of paper. And now here we are, fast forward to 2024, and guess what? A different group of people are saying, all you have to do is hand over this piece of paper and election laws will go to that which you choose it to be. That is not correct. And as we'll probably talk about in a minute, that is in Michigan very, very dangerous.
Mm. So let's get into what their plan is. And so, by the way, this is not, I look at, so we show here, David Jose, he's definitely connected with this group. He seems to be kind of a spiritual guru for this group. There's I'm going to show just a couple of very short clips of a video here. They're taking credit for the removal of Sue Aller as chair of District 1. And Dave Jose posted this video on Twitter. And here we have
Dave Jose, our coach, and his teachings, and how are you able to use Dave's method to really break things open?
After we had a good understanding of David Jose's method and learning and applying the fundamental principles, we were able to share that with other members of our executive committee and give them an understanding so they could apply it. And I think that was really the reason that we were able to come together.
Okay, so that is Craig Snyder. He's on the executive committee for District 1. And this right here is Dave Lemire in the top left corner, who's also District 1. And the bottom left is a man named Brad Tuttle, who is he's associated with the website. He's from Texas. The other guy is from another state. I don't know where. And this is Dave Jose himself. I just want to show a little bit of this. This is just a 3-minute clip. This is a video that is actually linked to on their website, wethepeoplenotices.com. And
come back in. Please, if you are here, please like.
I'm gonna skip forward just a little bit.
Like I said, I don't charge CPS parents to learn how to get Mighty Victory and get their kids back. I never charged. For those who have not gotten their kids back, I will tell you that now you are going to see children across America coming back. I'm going to let you know that some of the people who were prosecuted for January 6th, you're going to see them released from jail. You're going to have a lot to do with it if you choose to. Please do share this on Twitter, because we want those who are trying to get remedy to get the remedy. So I'm going to tell you, if you are somebody who had your child taken, you're going to see remedy. If you're somebody who had your house taken, your car taken, your dog taken, your mom taken, if you were prosecuted for January 6th and the right law wasn't used, you're going to get remedy. If you are someone who was prosecuted by any statute in the statutory code and it did not follow what was necessary for the common law, you're going to see remedy.
All right. Before we bite off to more than we can chew, I'd like to hear your response. So, Dave,
I mean,
this is the legal expert who's not an attorney.
Okay, so first of all, let's back up a second. No, let's say the short version. No, none of those things are true. And if you are a non-attorney, I don't know about Arizona law for sure, but I do know Michigan. And if you're a non-attorney in the state of Michigan, and Scott, you and I have talked about a couple of them, and you are out telling people, giving people legal advice that is the unauthorized practice of law, you can expect a knock on your door. Okay. And that is from people who are going to tell you to knock that off, or you're going to end up going to jail because you're not allowed to do that. If you want to represent yourself with those principles, you're free to do so. You are not allowed to tell other people, give people legal advice, especially legal advice as flawed as that. I don't know who this person is. I'm guessing they're not an attorney. I don't know whose library they.
I asked him, and he is not an attorney. In fact, he says that attorneys. He told me on Twitter that attorneys don't have they don't know the real law.
Okay.
That they don't teach they teach, and if they do, they keep it secret from the people because this is secret knowledge.
Well, we did have some secret societies in law school, but most of them were around drinking. So no, that's not true at all. And let's talk for a second about how dangerous this is, right? So these things do not come with a money back guarantee, and they don't come with a you get out of jail free card. So if you walk into court and say, I demand X or Y because David Jose, constitutional expert, told me so, and you lose, the judge, there's no refund. There's no, you don't go to them and say, whoops, I screwed up, I'm sorry. This is not a thing. So none of the stuff that it is in his contents or teaching is applicable to the state of Michigan. And I want to, if you have a second, I think it's a good time to talk about, well, it's not just, it has a downside to it. So in Michigan, under Proposal 2, which unfortunately is the law of the land and is part of our Constitution, Scott, you and I think both agree that it's got some flaws to it, but we did not win that election. One of the parts of election law in the state of Michigan is about intimidating election officials. Okay. If you intimidate an election official, that is a jailable offense. All right. Maybe that's not true in Arizona. Don't know, but I do know that it's true in Michigan. So if you go to your township clerk, who is an election official, and make a ruckus and wave pieces of paper in front of them and say, we demand you say, take out voting machines, you will likely find yourself behind bars. So my advice to Michigan listeners and precinct delegates and party activists is don't do that. That's not how you win elections, and that's not how you change things. And Scott, one of your theories has been, this is for disruption and anarchy, and it's also just for pure losing. Because if we spend our time doing this stuff, if we spend our time walking around with pieces of paper, we're not spending our time knocking on doors and making phone calls and raising money and helping actual candidates win, which is what the Democrats want. And apparently it's what these people want as well.
That's right. Yeah. So what they're doing, and we will, and by the way, I also put in this story, let me just show here, it's not just David Jose that's doing this. And come on. All right. So it's not just David Jose that is advocating for this. It is also Donna Brandenburg. And I saw, and I'm not doing this to throw, she's made all kinds of personal attacks at me and whatever for exposing this. And all I'm trying to do here is bring it to light. This is nothing personal towards Donna. And I'm sure she's a very nice person, but I'm sure all these people, when you're friends with them, they're very nice people. But Donna, I saw on her podcast last week that she was advocating something really similar. So I wanted to talk to her. So I gave her a call. She took my call and she said, and I have the whole recording of the call here because she went on her Telegram channel and completely misrepresented what was in the call. So because of that, I put the whole call on here. I wasn't even going to do that. I was just going to quote her a little bit. But it's an interesting call. But she said, I asked her, what is your plan here? What's going on? She says, I'm trying to get a bunch of people across the state who we will train to go into township meetings and basically take over the township meetings. And by Michigan law, we will demand that they remove the electronic voting machines or be removed, be charged with the crimes that they're committing. That's the plan. So then I asked, who would prosecute the clerk, she said, "We don't really have to. Citizens can remove them at the spot that they're in. They'll have a chance to resign or goodbye to you." And so this and that mirrors essentially, from what I understand, the plan on We the People notices, and the same timing. They're working on it now before the election.
Okay, let's talk about all the reasons why that's wrong. Let's we get the basics of why this is wrong. Okay, so the party in charge of elections in the state of Michigan is the Secretary of State. Okay, the Secretary of State, pursuant to Michigan statute, and if anyone's following at home, it's 168.21, has supervisory control over local election officials. Okay, so if a local election official does something that the Secretary of State deems as out of order for the current election law, what does the Secretary of State have the right to do with supervisory control? That is, take over the elections. And what I like to do when I explain this to friends is I flip it around and ask people if this is legitimate. So let's say a bunch of University of Michigan students, where I am a graduate, come in and demand that the Washtenaw County clerk use over the phone voting. I demand it. Would that be allowed? The answer is, of course, no, because that's not provided for under state law. So can a local clerk just decide on their own, even if they want to, even if they decide, yep, I agree with you 100%? They cannot. Let's say a local township takes a vote to change an ordinance, and in their ordinance, which is they can do, can they pass an ordinance that says no absentee voting? They cannot. And if they try to, the state of Michigan will be out there under the power of the Secretary of State, given to them under Michigan election law, to take over that election. It works both ways, right? So people forget, people talk about election integrity issues. People forget that in August of 2020, there was a primary election in Wayne County, and it was so bad that the Wayne County Board of Canvassers, in a 4-0 vote, which is a completely bipartisan vote, asked the state to take over. And the state said, no, they will not exercise their supervisory control at this time. It is discretionary, but they are allowed to do it. So can a person go into the township and say, I demand you X or Y? They cannot. So don't do that, because if you do that and somebody says you're threatening an election official, you're going to get handcuffed. That's not something you want to play with, because David Jose is not going to bail you out of prison.
That's right. Yeah. And that's one thing, as I've been looking into him, he talks about all his wins, and he takes credit in that. He takes credit for a lot of things. Like he takes credit for the Arizona audit actually taking place in that same video. He says he didn't charge anybody for teaching people how to get the only full forensic audit in American history.
Right. It's interesting, because if he does charge somebody for his legal advice, that's like a de facto unauthorized practice of law, no question, and he would then also be going to jail. But good for him, giving away.
Yeah. And so he takes credit for all these so-called wins, and yet he doesn't. He of course never mentions how many of his students have gone to jail, believing that the laws don't apply to them.
Right, and the idea is that you have these people who are active, they're engaged, they want to help, they want to win, but like anything else in this world, they're looking for a shortcut. We lost Proposal 2 in the state of Michigan because the Democrats got more people out to vote for it than we got to vote out against it. There is no magical solution where you fill out a piece of paper and then magically that is reversed.
Right.
Like I said, I looked at the copy of the 3 notices. I used to be a county chair, so I suppose I would have gotten one of these. I mean, this is like what a law student writes when they're on drugs. I mean, no, it's a series of unconnected things with capital letters literally everywhere, as if that somehow creates a legal right on the state of Michigan. It doesn't matter what a document, a Boone or whatever, Maxim of Law from 1845 or John Locke, or the only thing that I thought was really good is that they quote Miranda versus Arizona, because they're going to need it, because Miranda versus Arizona was the case that established the rights you had to be read when you were arrested, the right to remain silent. So I'm glad they quoted Miranda so people can get real comfortable with what they're going to be told.
Right. And this is really the tragedy of everything that I've been reporting on, is that there are so many people who are so deceived. And that deception is leading them towards not only the demise of this country and the party, but of themselves. And I mean, it is absolutely tragic. I want to get to a few comments because we've had some good ones. Trump24 said, total complete failure and huge distraction for people under false hope. Shortcuts never work. Exactly. That's to the point that you just made. Sorry. Isn't Arizona where Karamo's 501c4 was formed? I think it was actually
Nevada.
Yeah, it was Nevada, but there were connections.
It's the same, right? It's the same group of people.
That's
and
right.
It is you want to lose, right?
Mhm.
You are directing people away from productive election efforts and putting them towards stuff like this.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, Trump24 said that the judge will laugh at you if you do this. And that would really probably be the best case scenario. Maggie Kurzweil says most clerks are now being schooled on the statutory sections to remove disruptors from an election venue. And so I would not be at all surprised if clerks, especially in District 1, are very well prepared for this, and that they know what's coming. That's one thing that people who advocate for these demands are dangerous. It's absolutely true.
Notice that one of the things that they're doing is it's never something that they do. It's always something that they need somebody else to do.
That's right.
They're going to put someone else in that as cannon fodder. And again, to Maggie's point, which she is correct, the Secretary of State put out a specific memo basically saying, reminder to city and township clerks that you have authority over election inspectors. So even if that person became an election inspector, which is somebody who works at the polls, they don't have the authority to change the rules. So if your intention was to go in there and change the rules and maybe, require ID instead of an affidavit when ID is not required, they will throw you out and you'll likely go into jail.
That's right. So, and Heather brings up a good issue that, legislation was passed last year here in Michigan that punishes intimidating. And that's exactly what you said earlier, Matt, that, if you intimidate or instruct election workers, it's punishable by a maximum of 93 days in prison and a fine of up to $500 for the first offense. I would not expect, I don't know Donna well at all. That's the only time I've ever talked to her. But I wouldn't expect her to be the one leading the charge and going in and demanding township clerks. I mean, what she said is she's recruiting others to do this.
Right.
Yeah. And Maggie says, let's see if Donna B exactly follows her own battle cry. Will she storm a clerk's office? Will she risk getting elected? And, the other thing too, to what you said, is, Matt, so if the state were to take over, first of all, I quoted you in the story from our conversation about this the other day, where he said, where was the most fraud in the 2020 election? And I mean, it's obvious it was in Detroit. And are they doing this in Detroit? I highly doubt it.
Right. And that's the important part. I mean, even if everything you say is true, right? So you're going to storm the township office and you're going to prevent fraud in Northville Township, Michigan. Okay. First of all, Northville Township, Michigan is probably redder than average. And the allegations of fraud were not in these areas where you have a clerk that might be receptive to that. When there were problems, and they were in city of Detroit, Wayne County, places like that. The county clerk is Kathy Garrett. The city clerk is Janice Winfrey. Do you think they are going to listen to you when you throw this piece of paper at them? They are not. Are you going to storm and have them remove, especially since probably you're not a resident of Detroit. You might be a resident of Wayne County, but you're not entitled to do that. Ask yourself, is in another area, are they entitled to do that? They are not. There's a process to remove an elected official. It's called recall. It worked in and around the Goshen plant. The I think Green Oak Township or wherever township they were in, they removed everybody through the recall process, an election that was held in last November. That they're allowed to do. That's permitted. But to storm in and throw around a piece of paper, it is not. Let me add one more thing too. So for the benefit of everybody, what is an affidavit? An affidavit is something that you take under oath. Okay, so I hereby swear that this is or that occurred. Most of the time you get this signature notarized so that there's some external proof that you signed it. Does it have any more legal authority than that? It does not. Okay, it does not. If I do an affidavit about my favorite chocolate chip cookie recipe, it doesn't make it any more official. It's not a thing. So having pieces of paper that you call affidavits does exactly nothing.
Mm-hmm. Really, all it does is it just binds you to being truthful. Whoever it binds the signer, not you.
Correct. Correct. It doesn't give it any more legal authority. It doesn't create something where nothing existed before. And
right.
And these things are there are 3 of these demands or notices that were posted. They're full of inconsistencies and accuracies. You literally have to spend a day on each one. But there's one part of one that I found to be very important. These groups have always been, Scott, I've been talking about the power of the precinct delegate. Okay. And that's the power, that's quite debatable. Precinct delegates really only have power to go to a convention to affect party business, but leave that as it may. In one of these documents called Notice of Clarity to Precinct Delegates, it says, please take notice as a PD bound by contract into agency of government. Your power to advance political candidates in your internal government is highly regulated. What they are trying to say is, now that you've become a precinct delegate, you're under my control, and therefore you must do this. That is preposterous, number one. And number two, it's the exact opposite of what they said before. So this group was pushing to try to get more and more precinct delegates. It's great to have people engaged in politics. It's awesome. But they tried to confer some fake authority. And now that these people have realized that authority is fake, now they're saying, here's what you must do because you're a precinct delegate. I don't know. I guess, does that apply to the person that lives there or not? Who knows? But it flipped around what they had originally said, which you have the power to do that, which is you and I have seen that before in other parts of this effort.
Right. Yeah. So a few more comments. Randy Guppy says, sadly, the only way some of these people will learn is by going to jail. They better quit listening to these bad actors with a Q. And I think, that's actually a good point. I think that, QAnon does have, it was clearly a psychological operation. It taught people to believe in secret knowledge, that you could read between the lines, that you could discern these messages that were really from higher up or whatever. And these are secret messages that say what's going to happen. You could somehow divine the future or understand what was happening if you could just read, they're like prophetic messages. And that really messes with the mind. when you start believing in that kind of stuff, then it's like with the left, how they banned plastic straws. I think, that was actually an intentional thing. And I remember, I remember some pundit, I don't remember who it was. It was Mark Levin. He said, if you can ban plastic straws, you can ban anything. And I think that, that was a part of this psychological operation in order to get the left into the whole idea of banning anything. And Q is a similar thing on the right, to get people to believe anything so that they would do anything. And here we have them, like they're literally trying to foment an insurrection in township clerks and township. And that's exactly, that's what Donna was saying there. We want to march in and goodbye to you if you don't agree with us, if you don't do what we say. That's the French Revolution. It's not the American Revolution.
Goodbye how? You think that the township clerk is going to say, oh, these people came in, therefore I quit? That's not how it works.
Right.
right? I mean, especially in and around a lot of these things, these people are used to getting yelled at a little bit. But it always goes back to the same thing. If it's too good to be true, it is. It was too good to be true that by putting out a piece of paper, we can change our election process to being same day, paper ballot, hand count only. It is too good to be true. That is not a thing. You're not going to be able to do this. Please, if you are willing to put the effort in to do this, maybe put the effort into your local candidate running for state house, because changing the state house in the state of Michigan is very important.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the whole, that's exactly the point, that there is only one. I mean, they cite the Constitution. They pretend to be experts in the Constitution by quoting the same phrase in all 50 different constitutions. So in the conversations that I've had with these people on X before I blocked them all because they're just so annoying, is that they're experts in the Constitution, but they don't read the rest of the Constitution. And the U.S. Constitution very clearly says that it's the state legislatures that get to determine the manner in which the elections are held. I mean, that's,
I wouldn't even concede that ground. These people are not constitutional experts. These people are people who read the Constitution and then twist the words to something that they think it means. Okay, well, that's cool. Now, if you could get 5 Supreme Court justices to agree, then maybe you're getting somewhere. But in the United States Constitution, one man's interpretation of the law isn't particularly relevant. And again, flip it around. If a Democrat were to say, I have the constitutional right, power, inherent authority, blah, 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 to vote by my phone, can he do so? They cannot. Even if the clerk agrees, even if a group of people agrees, even if they file an affidavit, even if they storm the township, it doesn't matter, because that's not how the law works.
Right. And that's fundamentally, that a fundamental Republican principle is the rule of law, that we appreciate and we respect the rule of law. And these people demonstrate that they're not really Republicans because they completely disregard the rule of law. They think that the law doesn't apply to them and that they can use the law to force their will upon others. And that's not rule of law.
Right. And it's laden with inaccuracies. There's all kinds of things that are wrong. They're directing all this energy and effort towards what should be to anybody an obviously failing plan. And Scott, you've asked the question, why? Why are they directing people to this obviously ineffective effort? And the answer is because they want to lose, because their goal is not to win elections. I heard from a very large political organization a quote that they want, who is, by the way, connected to some of the same players, they want to discourage early voting.
And that's a turning point. I've been seeing that. Yeah.
And it's insane. It's insane. Let's go back to the race for the George Santos seat in New York. The replacement lost by not that much. And what happened on the day of the election? There was a blizzard. There was a blizzard on the day of the election. So if Republicans vote for one day and Democrats vote for 30 days, who's going to win the election? The answer is Democrats. Democrats know that. That's why you don't hear a lot of commentary about it. You don't hear Democrats say, no, that's a terrible idea. Because they're like, we love it. Keep fighting each other. Keep pushing your effort at these insane things, and we'll just continue to win more elections.
Right. Well, and it's even further evidence, that if Turning Point is, because several people have from Turning Point have been saying that even just this week, and they're based in Arizona. And in the 2022 election, that is really what caused, there's so many different things that you could point to. There's probably a dozen different things individually that you could point to that say, well, that was enough to flip the election to the Democrats. And they did all of them. But the one of the biggest is driving Republicans and encouraging Republicans to only vote on election day. And because they only voted on election day, it was, they did all kinds of funny business with the machines. It looks like they programmed the machines to there were printer errors and all kinds of things with the machines that were caused by the massive numbers of Republicans that were voting on election day. And they were able to isolate that group of ballots and do all kinds of funny business with that group of ballots that caused more delays and everything. And there were many of the same day votes or ballots that weren't even counted.
Right.
And it was because everybody was voting on election day. Had they voted early and all those ballots been mixed in with all the Democrat ballots, they couldn't have isolated that group of ballots and done funny business with them. So, it's such obviously bad advice. It's terrible.
Well, and for the viewers, who does not subscribe to this theory? The person who does not subscribe to this theory is Donald J. Trump.
That's right.
So Trump came to Oakland County. He spoke at Waterford. I was there. It was great to see him. Great event. But what I saw that interested me was signs all the way around the outside of this airplane hangar with a QR code, text to whatever, vote early.
Yeah.
Vote early, because the campaign people that he has this time around are real professionals. Chris LaCivita, Susan Wiles, these are pros, and they know we got to get out there and vote early. Just look, you have a random flat tire, something happens at home and you forget, you can't get there, whatever it is. If it's a small percentage, 5% of the population, and it only impacts Republicans, you're going to lose every election that you're in. But if you get out there early and you mitigate that and say, can I get out any one in the next 9 days? Can I get my absentee ballot turned in? So the professionals that are running campaigns, including the professionals that are running Donald Trump's campaign, disagree with that concept.
Right. Yeah. If you live in a small town and you think that, that the elections are, the reality is the way that we hold our elections in Michigan, it couldn't be that much worse. It could be over the phone voting, so I guess it could be worse, but you can't ask for ID. There's so many, there's no transparency. The early voting, mandatory drop boxes, encouraging Zuckerbucks, all of the just crazy stuff that's happening in terms of our election laws that truly, encourage, they look like they're designed to encourage fraud. It's a problem and it needs to change. And that's not, I don't think Matt and I are saying that we shouldn't, that we like the current election laws. Absolutely not. That's not, we don't like these election laws, but there's only one way to change them according to the Constitution. If you respect rule of law, there's only one way to change those, and that is to get Republicans elected, specifically Republicans who want to change those laws elected. That's the only way.
Right.
There's no other way.
And look at a place where it worked in Georgia.
Right.
It worked, and these were kind of things that I think the vast majority of people requiring voter ID. You can't mandatory send out absentee ballots. This kind of the reverse of some of the stuff that we do. And it was before the next election had occurred, those kind of simple changes drew the ire of Joe Biden. And everything he said was wrong. More people came out to vote. The votes were more secure. They were easier to count. And yeah, Heather, the Michigan House is winnable if we put in the work. Correct. We got 2 elections coming up in about 3 weeks. And we really need to get people out and win those elections. And every minute we spend focusing on something other than that is an unproductive minute. We win the House, we win the Senate, we win the governor's race, and guess what? You can start changing those things back to something that works a lot better.
That's exactly right. And but it's hard work. And the one thing that all of these organizations and all these disruptors in every state have in common is that they not only do they not want to do the work, they want to get in the way of that work as much as possible. Right. They want to obstruct that work. And that's exactly what this is. They're getting out there to try to demand playing on people's emotions and anger and even, hopelessness over, and convincing people like, what's the point in voting? And there's that sentiment. I think if you listen to the phone call that I had with Donna Brandenburg, there's that sentiment there. She actually said, so what's the point? Like, well, we can win in this election. And she says, no, we can't.
Look, they completely racially gerrymandered the House. That's what the district court in Western Michigan said, and did everything they could through all these laws at it. And you know what the final result was? 56-54. 56-54. You did everything you could, and you could barely keep a majority, which means if you spend actual time and effort and go out and do the things you need to do to win elections, You flip one seat and it's a tie. You flip two seats and you control the House. When you control the House, magically you have authority to start doing things with respect to the budget, start putting, negotiating harder. But as a minority party, you really can't do very much. So it's time to go out and win elections.
Right. Here's a good question. If we all vote early, could that be used by the fraudsters to manufacture enough votes to overcome that? So that is the I've seen that argument from a lot of people against early voting. So that's a good one to address.
Okay, that's a great question. So let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about the concept of manufactured fraudulent votes in the way I think that people are using it, which is like a fake ballots printed somewhere and then just dumped in a ballot box. Okay, so in 2016, I think most people don't indicate that this sort of thing occurred, and then they all say that it occurred massively in 2020. And they all mostly point to Detroit. So the turnout in Detroit in 2020, I think they had said there's 160,000 fake ballots. We watched them, blah, 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 blah. So you would think that the turnout would be 160,000 more votes. It wasn't. It was basically no more votes. So that was not. Now there were the errors that occurred were when the Secretary of State said, we want you to presume that all signatures are valid. Okay, that's a real one. And a lot of people raise that as an issue that, well, when people turn in petitions to run for office, they can scrutinize the signatures, but not when they turn in a ballot. That's a real thing. You can't change that rule unless you win. So the answer to this person's question is all they're going to know is the number. They obviously don't know how many people voted which way, that it's not early tallied, right? It's just how many people have voted so far. So the chance of them fraudsters manufacturing votes, and understand with that analysis that I just talked about turnout, if you apply that precinct versus over precinct, you'll see that they're mostly about the same. Right. And and people kind of got to understand that's a really high hurdle. There's issues going on with lack of ID and, like I said, signature verification. Those are real issues. But is this enough to make me tell people not to vote early? No, it's the exact opposite. Vote as early as you can. Because right. one of the things, keep in mind, this is an important one. When you vote early, you can then go back to the township and get them to confirm that you have voted early. So if you're worried about the flip, which is your ballot not making it in, I know a lot of people have said you can do your absentee by walking in, which is a good way if you're worried about that, but you can check on it. You can say, hey, I want to make sure that you counted my vote. Clerks are happy to look through. Boom, we see you have a vote tally. Thank you very much. Have a good day. So it provides an ability in the other direction.
Yeah, and that's a really, really good point. Now, there's two other really good reasons for voting early. One is that nobody else can vote for you.
Yes,
no one else
can vote for you. Correct.
On election day and say, I'm Scott McMahon, and here's my address, and I want to vote. And all they do, they don't check ID or anything else. They say, oh, okay, he hasn't voted yet, so go ahead. And we've all heard stories about people showing up on election day to vote, and they say, oh no, you've already voted, so here's a provisional ballot that's not going to end up getting counted.
Exactly right.
And so that's one. And then the other one Joe actually has here. Joe Branda says early voting allows Republicans to use resources to target those who haven't voted. And this is where, for all of the things that I completely disagree with and don't like about Ronna McDaniel, one thing that she did do that I think was really good was this idea of banking your vote. Because when you bank your vote, which means you vote early and then you tell the Republican Party that you've already voted, then they know, oh, okay, well, that's one person that I don't need to spend resources on. And so then they can focus their energy on in their database on those who have not yet voted. And so it really helps the party and all of the candidates, not just Trump. It helps all of the Republican candidates to better know how to use their resources and who to focus on. So, just super, super important, especially with the laws as they are right now, to vote early. And really for Republicans, this is one of those, kind of universally winning things. I mean, issues. If Republican candidates for the state legislatures, not just in Michigan but everywhere, when they run on sensible, like really sensible changes to election law, that's something that would have appeal for independents, moderates on both sides, and because everybody wants better elections. But when you
Right.
start saying, when it's radical, if you push it to as far to the extreme as possible and say, the elections are stolen, blah blah blah, and you come across as being far right wing, like that's a non-starter. So.
Right. I mean, one of the suggestions I think that was implemented in Georgia was they didn't verify signatures. They put some sort of objective information in there, like last four of social or date of birth or something like that, so it could be objectively verified. Of course, everyone would. You're right. Moderates support that. Independents support that. Democrats didn't support that, but Republicans could run on that and make that, and it was very effective. And then magically, once you have that happen, sort of the worries about the nonsense go away, and you can worry about actually getting out and winning an election. When you're talking about these campaigns, they're knocking doors, they're making phone calls, they're sending lit. Once you voted, that stuff's going to dry up because they know you've already voted. So that's a good thing for our party if we want to win. And hey, man, look back to 2012. Republicans dominated absentee ballots. They're mostly done by senior citizens. Senior citizens on balance mostly voted Republican. We lost that in the 2022 election. It was completely the other way around. We need to get that back. And one of the ways you get that back is you start focusing on the blocking and tackling you need to do.
Yeah, I think that it's worth examining who is saying to vote on election day, like who is promoting that idea, because really if you look at it, it's not. I think that's one of those pieces of information that has become a weapon against the Republican Party, and so the people that are promoting that, they either don't know what they're doing, or they're not on the right side of this. And right. There's Lauren posted a comment earlier that Charlie Kirk who runs Turning Point, like he's kind of at the top of it. He started it. He has advocated for early voting, and some of the others within Turning Point have advocated for early voting. But there are also people who say, well, Turning Point acts, who are with Turning Point, that they're having some conflicting messaging within their organization. So I don't know if it's bad actors within the organization. I don't know what it is, but they need to clear that up, and they need to denounce that same day voting issue. And there are others too. That's where I don't know about Mike Lindell, but I think that he clearly has done more harm than good. I can't point to anything that he's done that has resulted in making our elections more secure. And I don't know what his motives are. He seems to be a sincere person, but and he's exposed some things, but yeah, I don't know. So
the point here is to win elections.
Yeah. Morbid Monkey says Matt Wilk is the man. I completely agree.
Thank you.
And Maggie Kurtzwell says I won my re-election on the absentee ballots and not on in-person voting on election day. Wake up. And that's really, that's where our focus needs to be. So, and I think that, the message of all of this is we've got to come together and do the hard work to win elections. That's the only way out of the problems that we're facing. And we have to come together and we have to work on getting the vote out, raising resources and funds, and recruiting delegates and recruiting, just coming together for the sake of freedom and rule of law. And we have to ignore all of these idiots that are trying to get in the way of that.
Look, it's very clear. There's no election Ozempic, okay? There's no shot I can give myself that I can all of a sudden win an election. It's hard work. I worked on campaigns. I worked on the 22nd House District. I ran and won 2 elections myself. It is work. You have to get out there. You have to be dedicated to it. And the interesting part is a lot of people are really motivated. The way the issues stack up for 2024 are very much in favor because people look about what's going around them and they don't like it. Well, get out. Don't fill out pieces of paper and wave them in your county clerk's face. Get out and knock on a door and make a phone call. Reach out to the candidates' organizations themselves. They'll be happy to place you. Pick the one you want. It doesn't even need to be in your own district. Pick the one you want. Go help out whichever candidate you really approve of, and let's go win an election or two.
That's right. I'm working on pulling up we have a great opportunity with, I'm just finding a text message here about it. So we've got a great opportunity right now with this special election to kind of practice. This is like a practice run to get kind of oil up the joints and get us prepared for what we've got to do for November with the special election. This is here in Michigan. We've got a special election for 2 House seats that were vacated because the Democrats that were in those seats won their mayoral races in November. And so now the special election's coming up. What is the date of it? Do you know?
I believe it's April April the 15th, April the 16th. Hang on one second. It's that second third Tuesday in April.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
it's always,
yeah. So 2.5 weeks away. I mean, this is just right around the corner.
Tuesday, April 16th. Tuesday, April 16th is the election.
3 weeks from yesterday. Yeah, it just got confirmed. On April 6th, there's going to be an event, a door knocking event, and it's going to be a fun thing. So for our Republican candidates are Josh Powell and Ron Singer, and they're going to be meeting out. They're going to be doing a bunch of door knocking together. If somebody's got a link for that, I can post it in the show notes. But they're getting together to do door knocking for both of the candidates, and then afterwards, at the end of the day, everybody's going to meet in the middle for socializing and having fun together. So should be a really great event, and this is just a good way to see what Republican activities are not getting together and complaining about what other Republicans are doing. Republican activities are getting together and getting out the vote and talking to voters and knocking on doors and finding out what actually matters to people. And that's a big part of knocking on doors. It's better than any poll. If you want to know what's going on in your state and in your town or in the city, don't read polls, go knock on doors. And it's in every way, I think it'll benefit you if you get involved in that. So
100%.
Yeah. And so thank you so much, Matt, for joining us. How can people get a hold of you on Twitter or wherever?
Yeah, Twitter, it's at MJWGoBlue. And that's probably the easiest way. That's my most active platform. And I want to thank you for having me on again anytime, Scott.
Great. And so you can find me on Twitter if it's at Bigger Truth. I'm on Facebook, but I don't post everything that I post on Twitter on Facebook. So I try. My Substack is biggertruth.substack.com. And these disruptors, they accuse me all the time of being like deep state funded or whatever. I am not deep state funded. All of my funding, I worked on this for 2.5 months basically for free, and for the last few weeks since I've launched the Substack, that has been just a huge blessing. Everyone that has become a paid subscriber, I'm deeply grateful to you. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It'll help me to keep going, and there's so much more work to do. So thank you all for joining us. Great questions today. And we're going to go ahead and wrap it up.